the Daily Roundup on Radio Islam International.
The Daily Roundup it is. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Live from our studios here in Durban. Durban, of course, across the world. Well, end of May it is for the elections in this country, 2024. You're going to be hearing, many manifestos, those that haven't launched as yet, as well as parties putting out, what they stand for, why you should be voting for them. And of course, all of them, will do, hopefully, their level best, and their supporters and those who put their faith in them and putting their X where it counts, hoping that they actually deliver on the promises and on the hard work that they claim to support, or the manifesto, or the paper that they claim to support. Well, we're going to be discussing them hopefully in the next few weeks and giving them some time on air, rightfully so, to hopefully talk to us about what their party is all about. Have they changed in the last few years? And this is, of course, those parties that have been in existence now for a number of years. Joining us in studio, of course, is the EFF, represented, and I'll tell you the representatives very shortly. Ultimately, it's the party that we are concerned about. And, regarding the party itself, the leader of South Africa's third largest political party, the EFF, promised to create jobs for millions of the country's unemployed, to turn around its economy as he seeks to attract more voters for the party ahead of the much-anticipated general election. The Economic Freedom Fighters, the EFF party founder Julius Malema, addressed a packed 56,000 capacity Moses Mabhida Stadium, and this is, of course, in the city of Durban a couple of Saturdays ago, as he launched the party's election manifesto to the rankest support of his supporters, those that were able to make it, as well as many who are watching from elsewhere. With election season well underway, or at least the canvassing thereof well underway, most political parties who have not launched their manifestos are expected to do so in the coming weeks. A date for the election, of course, having been announced just as of recently. And of course, as we are talking this evening, a bit more on that budget speech and the analysis thereof, and how, what does it mean for us? What does it mean for the bottom line of South Africans? And hopefully that'll come a little later on in our show in the next hour or two. I'm joined in studio here by Honorable Member of the EFF, Karl Niehaus, and Mubarak Basha Mahaboob, the minority convener. First of all, let's start with Karl Niehaus. Good afternoon to you, Karl.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having us. We really appreciate it.
Karl, before we start the discussion itself, I'm sure many listeners to your familiar voice would have assumed that they are going to be casketing you out of this world in green and gold and the colors of the different party that you represent. Karl, your story, in a couple of weeks or months now, maybe you're still counting in days, deciding to join the EFF. Why? Before we go into further discussions, we've got time.
Well, I'm here in my red golf shirt, and I joined the Economic Freedom Fighters on the 14th of December. That is last year, 2023, so you're quite correct that it is still a short while. But of course, I have found over many years that the ideals that the Economic Freedom Fighters stand for and what I stand for are the same. And therefore, I came to the conclusion, together with the members of the political party that I started last year, which was called the African Radical Economic Transformation Alliance, that it made absolutely no sense to continue to have a separate party with, for all practical purposes, the same ideals for the achievement of economic freedom in our lifetime, the return of the land to the people, the nationalisation of the South African Reserve Bank, the development of our economy through the intervention of a strong state, the development and establishment of a state bank, and all those issues that are so clearly set out in the 7 cardinal pillars of the Economic Freedom Fighters. So once we decided that it made no sense to have all these small, factional little parties and that it is critically important to try and unite the progressive left as much as possible. It was absolutely a no-brainer for myself and other individual members of the African Radical Economic Transformation Alliance, which is now disbanded, to join the Economic Freedom Fighters. And I must say that I've had some of my happiest times in politics during the last 2 and a bit months in the EFF. The EFF is an incredibly well-organized political party, a revolutionary party. It is a party that is clear in terms of its ideology. And what I love most are the fighters, the ground forces of the economic freedom fighters that are truly concerned about service delivery, about the lives of the people and the communities in which they work. I've never seen this before. A while ago, I went to a meeting in New Clare. When we drove away from the meeting, we saw on the street corner that there was a sewage spillage. The ground forces of the EFF in that area immediately got involved. They immediately managed to get Johannesburg Water to come out the next day. And when I went back there to go and look how work was progressing, I found some of my fellow fighters literally knee-deep in the sewage working with the Johannesburg Water. Now, honestly, I don't know of any other political party, Mubarak, I'm sure you will agree with me, where fighters are so committed and will do that. I come in the past from the African National Congress, and I know how entitled the ANC became. I know how the leadership of the ANC became totally isolated and separated from the people. And I cannot imagine myself, any of those leaders, or even rank and file members of the ANC, getting involved in stopping a sewage spillage and servicing the communities in that way. So this is what the Economic Freedom Fighters in essence is. An organization, a political revolutionary party that cares for our communities, that services our communities, that has a plan on how to service our communities. You know, when you go through the EFF's election manifesto, which is a bulky document, it is 259 pages altogether, you get detailed plans. It is not pie in the sky. And those plans are clearly set out in 33 different chapters. And there is amongst those 33 different chapters a specific chapter that deals with the issue of fiscal and monetary framework. So it tells you how the money is going to be found in order to be able to address these issues, amongst which the creation of jobs and the return of the land to the people is absolutely critical. It's been a golden thread. It's been a foundation of the EFF right from its start. But of course, the EFF is very responsive to the environment in which our people live. They understand the suffering that our people undergo because of the mismanagement of Eskom and load shedding. And therefore, the title of our EFF manifesto this here reads, "Our Land and Jobs Now, Stop Load Shedding." And that summarizes the commitment of the EFF to change the economic fortunes of the people in South Africa fundamentally, in its overall ideological network and understanding, but at the same time, it also shows us the immediate responsiveness of the economic freedom fighters to address this critical issue of load shedding that has caused on so many different levels so much harm to our communities, to businesses that have collapsed, to students, to learners that cannot do their education studies that they have to do, to medical facilities that collapse, the tragedy of what we hear of people who actually lose their lives because of load shedding. Fighter Mubarak, please come in.
Yes, Mubarak Basha, Mahaboob, assalamu alaikum, Mubarak.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
And shukran, thank you for joining us.
Mubarak, for inviting us.
Mubarak, you of course the minority convener and out there in the Greater Joburg and Gauteng area. Talk to us, about the readiness of the EFF. Are you guys ready for this, this year's election?
To be ready
is a small word, right? But everybody, who's in a political party, especially like the EFF, knows that readiness takes months, years of preparation.
Yes.
2024, you got to start working, from 2016. 2019, 2020. Talk to us about the build-up. How ready are you guys for 2024?
Absolutely. We are highly prepared. We are ready to take over the government. Look at this load shedding. Load shedding is destroying business. I want some business in Gauteng, all over. Now, I'm affected, I'm affected with the load shedding. I'm not making money. I can't pay the rent. I can't pay the salaries. Load shedding is disgusting. We can't even think what is happening in the country. How many jobs has been lost? My friends are closing down their commercial businesses. Manufacturing factories are done. They can't even pay the rent. They can't pay the workers. Everything is going, it's destroying. It's small business are all finishing. You can go to Kurgas Road, you can go to Rodiport, you can go to Lenasia. The business are done. They can't make money because of load shedding. We are going deeper, more down and down. Our economic is done. We need to stand together and change. 30 years now. 30 years is a long time. 30 years is enough. Now we need to change. What we are asking, give us a chance. Let us try to fix whatever damage. Let's fix now. The jobs are, people are suffering. There is no jobs. Load shedding is a bigger crisis in the country. I have a fighter, Kuraysha, with me. I think she wanted to have some words.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, sister, and thank you for joining us. Go ahead.
So you're speaking to Kuraysha. I am the minority coordinator for the Johannesburg area for the EFF. To be able to implement that what's currently going on with our infrastructure. So in the past 30 years, what we've noticed that our sewers, our drainage, our electricity, everything has gone up. But what we're failing to understand, look at your billing systems. Your billing system says the exact same amount, including 30% increase. 4 years ago, we've got, I think during the Corona came in, people lost their jobs. People lost their incomes. But the manner on which people are currently paying what their expenses is going high. Also to tap in a little bit in with Palestine as well. We were one of the first parties as EFF. Our CIC, Mr. Julius, brought in the vote count. It was 9 votes, 8 agreed to bring down the embassy. And alhamdulillah, the Israeli embassy was closed down. We took forces, we took procedures, and we did everything it possibly could. So we closed down the embassy. Moving forward, we need to be able to work on another strategic plan on to be able to stop the humanizing of what's currently happening in Palestine. We work towards Gaza. The reason is because South Africa has suffered the same issues what you would say 30 years ago. EFF, and as far as our safety and public, just the other day, I think we had an issue that was happening on the highway. It took us less than 5 minutes to get all of our MMC. And our MMC actually put in a procedure where on the highways they're going to be able to assist. So, yes, we've got a lot of ground forces. We've got a lot of assistance. We're changing when it comes to the medical fields. We're changing when it comes to education. Kids in these days, you notice, we can't even get placed in schools. We've got members of the EFF is currently assisting me when it comes to placing children in school. We we need to understand why is South Africans paying for education. Education is supposed to be free. According to the Madiba Act, no child was supposed to be unhoused and uneducated. So why is it our kids are paying for school fees? People that are domestic workers are paying for school fees. People that are SASSA payers are paying school fees. So I can't understand why is our kids not be able to get the rights it was deserved from our South Africans. Over to you, Carl.
Carl, I think we've touched on a number of topics, and that's, of course, the ICJ ruling, which, I think deserves a bit more attention, and hopefully we'll unpack there later. But, Carl, I wanted to ask you something specific, right? I mean, you are, comparatively to those at the table, a bit of a newer member, newbie, to the EFF. As an outsider, as a person who likes what the EFF stands for, that, we want justice, we want the end of corruption, we want strong policing, etc., etc. When it comes to the EFF, the party has been associated and synonymous with the land issue, that the redistribution of land, that those who were displaced and, disempowered years ago need to have access to the land, which in principle is excellent. That economic empowerment needs to be done. There's obviously a concern by many in middle to upper bracket, middle class South Africa, let's put it that way, that means that you're coming from my backyard. Is that the case, Carl?
Well, let me say, although I'm relatively new to the economic freedom fighters, I'm of course an old hand in politics, and I've been in the liberation struggle for the last 44 years. So in the overall understanding of the essence of what needs to be done in South Africa, I've always been clear that if we do not address the land issue and we do not actually get expropriation of land without compensation to deal with this issue that the land had been stolen by colonists from the majority of black African people, the indigenous people of this country, there will never be economic empowerment. You see, we need to understand that the foundation of economic empowerment and growth is really the land. And the fact that the majority of black African people are economically disempowered can be traced back historically to the loss of the land because of colonial thievery. Now, the economic freedom fighters is very clear that this historical injustice has to be corrected. But that does not mean the stereotype and the caricature that now everyone is suddenly going to lose the use of the land, and literally, in the phrase that you used, that they will come for your backyard. That is total nonsense. What the economic freedom fighters stands for is that the land will be nationalized, but at the same time the land will be made available for proper usage and for economic and effective production to all the people in this country, which must include, of course, the majority of black and African people. And there is a huge problem that we have in South Africa that even on a conservative calculation, 72% of the land is still in the hands of the white minority. That is an injustice. And in that context, the economic freedom fighters has committed ourselves that within a period of 5 years, 50% of the land must be in the hands of the majority of black and African people. And that process must be driven by a change in our constitution, an amendment of Section 25 of the Constitution, which is very problematic because that amendment, Section 25, is really the guarantee of property rights, and those property rights that colonists and whites have. You know, I always use the example, and I think when one uses it, it helps to explain the injustice. If I steal your car and I go and park it at my house, and you find out that the car is actually parked at my house, and you come there, you find the car there, you want to take it, are you going to take your wallet out and say to me, can I pay you for this car of mine that you have stolen from me? If you listen to it like that, you understand how ridiculous it is, that there is no justice in such a system. So the economic freedom fighters has said that we will amend Section 25 of our Constitution to address that injustice. And we will amend it to say that the state, including Parliament, the executive, the judiciary, carries an obligation to redress the imbalances of the past through an enactment of laws that will achieve redress and equitably redistribute all resources. So property may be expropriated without compensation only in terms of law of general application for a public purpose or in the public interest. And it's important that that qualification must be understood. You know, if you contextualize the approach that we as the economic freedom fighters have taken to the nationalization of the land, you must understand that land in a place such as the United Kingdom is also considered to be the common property of the state. And then the land is allowed to be distributed for productive usage and for economic development. Now, if that is the case in the United Kingdom, which is not a very progressive, radical society, and all of us know that, why is it suddenly unacceptable for us to have that situation in South Africa? What is wrong with saying that our state, which is a democratic state, which belongs, as we understand it in our constitution, to the people of this country, where government is elected every 5 years through universal franchise, through a democratic process, that this state of ours must be the custodian of all South Africa's natural resources, which includes the land, the mineral resources and the water. And the relevant legislation, we as the economic freedom fighters say, should be passed to clearly define and contextualize state custodianship of natural resources. There's a clear constitutional approach. This is not a land grab approach. This will make sense in terms of economic development. It will make sense in terms of food security. But most importantly, it will empower the majority of people who've lost their ownership of the land to regain control, and through that regained control, which the state must facilitate because the state is the instrument in the hands of the people to redress injustices of the past, which the state must facilitate in order to give an opportunity to the majority of South Africans to empower themselves, to have access to resources through that land resource and through the wealth of the land, to also get access to financial instruments that will help them to become entrepreneurial, to grow small and medium-sized businesses, and through that process also to gain control over our minerals. You know, one of the biggest and saddest things, not only of South Africa, but of many underdeveloped nations, especially on our beloved African continent, is how our primary resources, how our wealth, which is our minerals, are not developed and enriched in our own countries. We get these primary resources, we get these raw materials at a very cheap rate, exported to the developed nations, and then they get enriched and developed there. And then we have to buy those enriched materials and products back from those developing nations at high cost, and them making the super profits out of our resources. And the economic freedom fighters is very clear. And it is stated unequivocally so in our policy documents that our mineral wealth must be developed, enriched, and turned into products that will truly serve our communities and also the international community. So there's nothing extraordinary except for a just system that is proposed by our plan of action on land.
Team EFF, Karl Niehaus, Sister Kuraysha, and Brother Mubarak, Basha, Mahaboob. We have run out of time, but I'm sure that we're going to get Team EFF hopefully back online with us. I want to thank you guys for coming in studio, Karl and Mubarak and Sister Kuraysha there at the end, and for the time and for the insights that you have given us regarding the movement of the EFF as well. Of course. Radio does not allow an ample, or rather an excessive amount of time. We are unfortunately going to have to park it, right there as far as our discussion is concerned. But nonetheless, folks, thank you for your time and thank you for your presence.
Thank you so much. I feel a little bit guilty because the other two members have not spoken that much. Can I perhaps just ask my dear fighter Mubarak if he wants to say a final farewell? And
it's they run out of time. Inshallah, we will do next interview. Inshallah.
Okay.
Inshallah.
And thank you once again. I know Mubarak is just around the corner as well as Sister Kuraysha, and welcome anytime, especially for the debates.
Carl's available anytime.
Karl is always available. In fact, Karl is available at midnight also.
I think you guys have actually phoned me at midnight, and I did interviews. Just a quick anecdote. One night, one of you guys had phoned me. I was fast asleep. In fact, it was a couple of years ago, quite a couple of years ago, because it was the time when Chris Hani had been assassinated, and it was a very difficult time for all of us. And I did a long interview.
Wow.
Which the next day my wife said, well, you did a great interview last night, You woke me up while you were doing it here in the bed. I had no recollection of it. What you had was a sleep talker talking to
you.
Final say I wanted to say that.
That's why she'll never forget you, Karl.
we want to say all the Indian brothers and sisters, they must join EFF. Inshallah, EFF will bring some good changes. We're all making dua that they all must come to join EFF.
Okay.
And we call on all South Africans. There's a few hours now.
No, especially I'm talking about
to still register.
Yeah, we just got about 5 hours.
And register online in the next 5 hours, those who haven't registered. And we call on all our fellow South Africans to vote for the economic freedom fighters. There's no other revolutionary political party that can change the fortunes of the people of South Africa and bring justice to this country other than the economic freedom fighters.
And Karl, CIC say all the Indian whites, they must come and join.
Yes, of course.
I think
every South African said, the commander
especially he's talking about minority.
The minorities and the majority, we all South Africans, and we all must join the economic freedom fighters.
Team EFF, thank you for your time, and I need to move on. And best of wishes to you guys.
Amen.
Thank you. And you're going to see how well we're going to do in these elections. After the 29th of May,
we want to take
the EFF will be the government of South Africa. And the CIC will be in the West Wing of the Union Buildings as the president of South Africa.
Okay. That's Karl Niehaus and his team out there in the studio with